Good morning. So the question this morning is, are Jews a race or a religion? And what was the original name of Christianity? What was what did people call Christianity originally? So those are the two questions. Number one, are Jews a race or are Jews a religion? And what was Christianity originally called? These are two questions that keep coming up, and they actually have pretty simple answers when you look at them in the context of history. So, number one, are Jews a race or religion? Well, we know there's a religion we've heard of called Judaism, and where that name came from was from Galatians 1:14. That's the first place we find the word Judaism used, and it's from the Greek Yahudismo, Judaism. And what that means is the religion of the Jews. So you have to understand that in the ancient world, or in the old times, they didn't name their religions. So the way it worked is that different races had a religion. So for instance, the Greeks had the Greek religion. You had the Greek pantheon with Zeus and Kronos and all the gods of the Greeks, right? That would be called the religion of the Greeks, right? It's just the religion of the Greeks. This particular race, the Greeks, had a religion, and that religion you can find in the stories of the Greek gods. The Romans had a religion. It was the religion of the Romans, right? So the religion of the Romans. You could call that Romanism. You could call the religion of the Greeks, you could call that Hellenism, right? Now, with Jews, the Jews had a religion. So we could call that Judaism, meaning the religion of the Jews. But if you understand it, there was no name for the religion. Just like the Greeks didn't call their religion Hellenism necessarily. I mean, maybe they did, but it was just, these are the Greeks and they have a religion, and these are the Romans and they have a religion, and these are the Jews and they have a religion, and these are the Samaritans and they have the same religion. You know, the Samaritans have the same religion as the Jews, basically. And you know, the Babylonian, these are the Babylonians, and they have a religion. And these are the the Hittites, and they have a religion. So there's no name for the religion. It's just, these are the people and here's their religion. The Hindus had a religion, so we call that Hinduism. Now, there was an interesting philosophy called Buddhism, and that kind of became like a universal philosophy known as Buddhism, the philosophy of Buddha. So that's why in Judaism, it's both a race and a religion, just like the Greeks were a race and had a religion. So the Bible is God according to the Israelites. Okay? That's another thing you have to understand, is that the Greeks, the Greek gods, that was God according to the Greeks. And the Roman gods were God according to the Romans. And the Babylonian gods were God according to the Babylonians. And the Sumerian gods were God according to the Sumerians. They named, they basically created these gods, and based on the world around them. They said, here's this force of nature, and here's that force of nature, and there's this force of nature. And they made stories about those, and those were the gods. And in Judaism, or in the religion of Israel, they said there's a creator, and so did Egypt. There's a creator, and this is what we call the creator, and we worship the creator. And they had a religion according to these people. So I'm not somebody who believes that these books are from God. I believe that people described God in different ways. And the Bible describes God in a certain way, according to the Israelites. It's God according to the Israelites. And just like the Greek gods are God according to the Greeks. So, and as far as what was the original name of Christianity, once again, people, the religion was just the religion of these people. But now Christianity became a philosophy that was universal. So, of course, Christianity means the followers of Christ. But previously, it would have just been the religion of the Israelites, because the Christians were Israelites. So you would just call it the religion of the Israelites, or it was the religion of the Judeans. It was their religion. Of course, there's kind of a conflict there because the Judeans had a lot of different factions. You had the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the Zealots and the Essenes. So there's different factions, and then they have their religion. And of course, these different factions all share the same basic religion, the religion of these race of people. And so, but they named their faction something different, but they're all part of a network that all believes in the same. Ultimately, they believe in the same religion, and then the other groups think that the other people are not doing it correctly, right? They're not worshiping God correctly. But they're all part of the same racial group, you see. So anyway, the Bible is God according to the Israelites. The original racial stock of Israel is Aramaean, which previously was Amorite. The further back you go, you find that they are the Amorites. They're the Amorites, and then over time, there's some mixing between the the Amorite race and the people of Hattusha and the people of Mitanni and the Hurrians and the people of Canaan. And, there's different tribes and stuff, and there's some race mixing that goes on there. But ultimately, the original stock is the Amorites, because the Amorites were the race that spoke Hebrew, or not Hebrew, but they were the Semitic race, and the original Hebrew is Akkadian. So if you've ever heard of a guy named Hammurabi, that means the father of the Amorites. Amr Abi. Amr Abi. Amr Abi. Hammurabi is the father of the Amorites. And of course, what we see is Hammurabi receiving the law code from Shemesh, the sun god. So Shemesh, the sun god, gives Hammurabi the laws. Hammurabi gets his law code from Shemesh, the sun man. This story is then retold by the Israelites as Moses getting the law code from the God of Israel. So it's based on the earlier story, and it's basically a similar race of people originally go back to this other race. I mean, if you look at where the people who were in Egypt came from, and you trace what the Bible says, they came down from that area of Padan Aram. Well, let's call it Aram. Let's call it Aram, right? And that's where Haran is, and that's where Abraham goes, and then he comes down to, he goes from Ur, and he goes up to Haran, and then he goes down to Canaan, right? Then he goes down into Egypt. And then there's this whole flow of people going from the east and through Aram, and then down into Egypt. And we're told that, I think it's in Deuteronomy, I don't know which chapter and verse, but my father was a wandering Aramaean, an Aramaean from Aram. So Aram is the territory that they're from. Now, if you look further back, let me put it this way: the Amorites, what that word means, what we're told it means through the dictionaries and what they know of what the word means, is that it refers to people that came down from the mountains. The Amorites were people that came down from the mountains. That's what it ultimately means. I mean, you'll have to look at the specific etymology of the word, but it means the people that came down from the highlands. which would be in the mountains, right? So, and then if you look at the story of Noah's Ark, of course it lands on Mount Ararat, and that's in the Caucasus Range. So it's a story because you got to understand the Sumerians were people who I believe came from the sea and came up that channel in there and landed down there in that marshy region, which is where the two rivers flow into the sea. That's where it started. That's where the Sumerian civilization started. But the Amorite civilization came down from the highlands. So they came down from the mountains down into that Mesopotamian area, right, where you have the two rivers flowing. And that's what Amorite refers to, the Mari people. Amorite, Mari, Amorite. So that's why now on a lot of the original stories, Noah's Ark, well, not Noah's Ark, but the Ark of the boat of Ziusudra or Anazag, not Anaxagoras, I'm sorry, Ziusudra or Xisithurus. Let's not talk about Xisithurus. That's a Greek word for Ziusudra. So Ziusudra, Astrahasis, I believe, could be another name. I'm kind of getting carried away here with names. Let's go with Ziusudra. I think that was the original name of the guy who survived the flood in the boat. Now that boat supposedly lands down there in Mesopotamia. Okay? But then that story was retold by these other people, and they put that ark landing in the Caucasus Mountains, up in the mountains, and these are coming down from the highlands. So this is identifying who this race of people is. They're a Caucasian race that comes down from the Mount Ararat, and they come down into Aram, and they go down into Mesopotamia, and they go down into Syria, and they go down into Canaan, and they go down into Egypt. And this is all happening around, there was a dynasty. There was an Amorite dynasty, which I believe was around 2000 BC. So around 2000 BC, there was an Amorite dynasty, and then that kind of disintegrated when new people came down from the mountains, and these were the Aryans around 1700 to 1500 BC, and they broke up the Amorite dynasty. And these Amorites had all of the Crescent region, all the Mesopotamian Crescent region, through Canaan into Egypt, okay, before it was broken up. So they had all of North Egypt, they had Canaan, they had all of Syria, and they had Mesopotamia, Babylon, right? Babylon. They had that whole territory was under the rule of this race until it started to disintegrate. And they ruled Egypt as pharaohs at that time, right? That's the time of the Hyksos. They ruled Egypt as pharaohs. And then around between 1700 BC and 1500 BC, that whole region got disintegrated. A new race comes down from the north, the Aryans, known as the Hurrians, and the Mitanni, and the Hittites. And then in Egypt, you have Yamos, retakes all of the whole Egyptian territories. He retakes North Africa, where the Hyksos were, purges them from their positions of power. He retakes the southern portion too, where the black Africans are, and then he takes back all of Canaan all the way to the territory of Syria. So he gets all that, and this is when now the formerly ruling class of Egypt that was in the north, which were not Egyptians, they were these people from this northern territory that was Aram, or whatever you want to call it, the Amorite race. They were just kicked out. Now there were still people of that race living there under Yamos, which is the true royal bloodline of Egypt, and they continue to live there. And this is 1500 BC, so they continue to live under Yamos's rule until 1200-ish, which is where you get the story of Moses, and he's going to take the Israelites out of Egypt. Now, of course, his name's Moses, which indicates that he was close to royal power, which is what the story suggests, because he has an Egyptian title, Moses, born of. That's an Egyptian that's born of. I've talked to people on the internet, and they think that Moses is a Hebrew word. It's not a Hebrew word. It's an Egyptian word. That's why the Egyptian pharaohs had names like Yamoses, Ramosis, Thothmoses, because Moses means born of, and there's a god ahead of their name. So Thothmoses, born of Thoth. Ramosis, born of Ra. Yamosis, born of Yah, the moon. Amosis. So Moses means he's born of, but not of an Egyptian god, which means he's born of what? Not of an Egyptian god. That's the important point, because he's rejected the Egyptian system, and he's going and he's creating a new religion for the Israelites, for his people, right? So it's a religion for his people, but he's coming out of Egypt. So it doesn't look anything like the religions of his people in Aram and his people in these other territories around Canaan or whatever, in Syria. It doesn't look like that, because it's a new thing, and so Moses means born of. It's not a Hebrew word. Noah is not a Hebrew word. Noah is No-ah, and ah means moon, and no is actually like new. Could be pronounced Noah. Nu is water. So wet moon, Noah, wet moon. And a wet moon is a crescent moon that appears at the beginning of the month over the horizon. So when you're looking out, let's say you're looking west over the ocean from Canaan, and you see there's a crescent moon, and it's setting over the horizon. It looks like a boat. It's a wet moon. That's Noah. In Egyptian, it's not a Hebrew word. So there's a lot of words that are Hebrew, and there's a lot of words that are Egyptian, and they're mixed together in the Bible because the Hebrews were in Egypt. And so anyway, Orthodox Jews don't know what these words mean. They think these are Hebrew words, and they're not at all. Just like they have a prophet named Amos. Well, that's the same name as the king of Egypt, who was not Hebrew, and his name was Yamos or Amos. That's how it's pronounced, or Ya, depending on how you pronounce it. But let's say Amosis. That was the god that purged the Hyksos. That was the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, that purged the Hyksos. Amosis. His name was Amosis. Is the moon. Moses is born of. You have a Hebrew prophet called Amos. Amos, born of Amos, born of So these are Egyptian words, and they're not Hebrew words originally. There are a lot. I'm not saying all the words. I'm just saying these specific ones. Just like Shemish, that is a Hebrew word because Akkadian is the original Hebrew language, and Shem is of course the sun. Shemish is the sun man. Semis, with the word Semite, Semis. Well, Samson, Semis son. Semis, and what's Samson about? It's a guy that grows his hair real long, and then he has strength, and then it gets cut off, and he gets weak, and it grows back again, and he gets stronger. See, that's the sun. That's the sun, because the religion of the Israelites is the light of God. It's the light of God, which is, of course, metaphorically, the sun is the light of God. But that's just metaphorically or allegorically in the stories. It's really about the light of God's wisdom and truth. So anyway, it's a complex story. And I think that should answer the questions that people have. Number one, Judaism, is it a race or a religion? Well, it's the religion of a race, just like the Greek religion was the religion of the Greeks, and the Roman religion was the religion of the Romans. So Judaism is the religion of the Judeans, and as far as what was Christianity called, it didn't have a name. It was just the religion of the Israelites. Right? This is the religion of the Israelites, and this is their religion. And of course, Jesus was the king of the Jews. A lot of people like to forget that was the whole point of the story, is that he was the king of Judah. And of course, the king of Judah is God's word, right? And this is what was tortured and killed, was God's word. This is what was rejected. That's what the story's about. But that's another topic. That's another topic. But still, that religion is the religion of a particular group of people. Now, that's one of the differences in Islam, is they'll say, well, what was a Christian? There's no religion. Jesus wasn't a Christian. He was a Muslim. Well, he wasn't a Muslim, because he was an Israelite. And all the prophets of Israel were Israelites. That's why they were only a prophet of Israel was not a prophet of all humanity. They were making prophecies for their people. And basically what they were saying is, if you don't follow God, our enemies are going to come and kill us all. That was the main prophecy of Isaiah. If you don't stop acting stupid, we're all going to be murdered by the Assyrians or these other people. They're going to come in and kill us all. Those were the prophecies, generally. So they weren't prophesying for all mankind like the Muslims think. That religion is just way off the rails. With Islam, they think that the prophets were prophesying for all of humanity. No, they weren't. They were prophesying for their people. It's just like if Alexander the Great got up and said, if you don't follow my directions, we're all going to be, we're not going to conquer this territory. Well, he was talking to his people, right? He wasn't talking to everybody. He was conquering the world for his people and for Greek civilization. So it wasn't, the prophets of the Bible are not prophesying for all of humanity. And so that's another story. We're not going to get into all that. It was a religion of a particular people, period. Now, of course, in the Bible, they claim that, they're God's chosen people. Well, of course, it's their story. So it's about them. So, of course, they'd be the most important people in the story, right? But it is the works of man. They created it. It's their book. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm an atheist. I'm not saying that there is no... I believe that there's a spiritual dimension that creates the universe, and that's the dimension of thought. And so there's the collective... I believe that the universe around us is the mind. You could call it the mind of God. It's a collective thought. It's a collective... let me put it this way. That thought, the physical space and energy is a mechanical representation of thought. Space and energy is a mechanical representation of thought. So you have collective thought, you have a collective mind around you with other people, because you're all having the same agreed upon thoughts. And then you have your own personal thoughts materializes your own mind, your own space and images and things you see, your own thoughts. So basically we're looking at thoughts. Thoughts materialize as space and energy, because what else could a thought exist as? When you think thoughts, you get space and energy, and that's how they appear, because the only thing you'll ever see is thoughts, and you'll have your own thoughts, and you'll have your agreements with other people, and those are the things you see. You'll never see anything else. So that's a scientific look at God, as opposed to a mythological. That's why in Greek philosophy you have mythos and you have logos. Mythos is the mythology of God, and logos is what the Greek philosophers like Pythagoras were doing, which is finding the scientific approach to understanding the nature of the universe. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that subject, and enjoy your day.